Good morning. It is Friday. We made it. I think I say that every week because these weeks are long but productive and getting a lot accomplished and also being very grateful um, for some things that I've been able to do and concentrate on. Just I'm still self quarantining here and only going out when necessary. But as you come in, just say good morning and where you are hailing from. I am here in Atlanta, Georgia. So, for those of you who are joining us, my name is Makara Rumley. I'm the Chief Engagement Officer at Hummingbird Firm. Welcome, Mandy. Thank you so much for coming this morning. Good to see you. Mandy is here in Atlanta. So definitely say what city you're from because I know we come from all over. And I started these community engagement chats because I'm the community engagement chief officer at Hummingbird Firm, and we do consulting around balancing face-to-face and digital engagement. What does that mean? You're probably like, what? So for large projects, whether they're environmental cleanup, development, new houses, condos, economic development in your neighborhoods, whether it's roads and bridges, a new trail that's coming to your neighborhood or a park. We work with the government or the companies or engineering firms involved to make sure that we are communicating effectively with the people who live around these projects, the people who will be impacted by these projects, residents, businesses, schools, churches, community centers, you name it. If it's happening in your neighborhood where you live, work, and play, oftentimes, if not always, you'll have an opportunity to engage in the decisions, and you want to be informed about how long a project's going to take, how is it going to impact the routes of transportation, routes and the way you drive. Are there any health implications? There are a lot of answers that need to be answered. Welcome, Pamela. Welcome, Kofi, this morning. So when I was thinking about what we were going to chat about today, community engagement chat, I would be remiss if we did not talk about the riots that are happening right now, started in Minneapolis and are spreading to lots of other parts of Minnesota right now. And so I just wanted to start our chat off with a quote from a philosopher that we all know. Really a portion of a speech that Martin Luther King gave in 1953, The Other America, because as always, his words continue to resonate in modern day, and everyone's always going back to something that he said. It's like, oh my gosh, could this dude see into the future, right? Good morning, Jade. Welcome. So he said, I think America must see that riots do not develop out of thin air. In the final analysis, the riot is the language of the unheard. What is it that America has failed to hear? King questions. In a sense, our nation's summers of riots are caused by our winter's delay. And as long as America postpones justice, we stand in the position of having these occurrences of riots and violence over and over again. Social justice and progress are the absolute guarantors of riot prevention. So as you know, people are outraged over the death of George Floyd, an unarmed black man who died while in Minneapolis police custody. 4 officers were involved in the case. They've currently been fired, but protesters across the nation are pushing for the officers involved to be charged and prosecuted. Unfortunately, we've been here before. This is a familiar story. Another thing I just wanted to share with you was just some thoughts from a Dr. Chandra Kraft. She's the Dean of the School of Health and Human Services at St. Cloud State University. And she talks about the psychology of why people riot, right? Because a lot of times you'll hear different news broadcasts and they'll be like, why are people destroying their own neighborhoods? That's stupid. This isn't going to fix anything. This isn't going to help anything. This is not solution driven. And so, you hear a lot of, opinions about the alarm and the reaction of why people choose riots to communicate, right? Or express their emotion. And riots are not, a special display of emotion reserved for the United States of America. Riots have happened all over the world in every country for a variety of reasons. So Dr. Kraft says, this is a trauma that has happened to one person, but the ramifications are being felt throughout a community. We are in the middle of a pandemic and people are feeling isolation. The sense of being heard and connected, feeling rage and frustration is coming to a boiling point for so many people. So I've been processing in my own way, and you're all probably thinking, great, Makar just talked about Martin Luther King. She talked about this Dr. Kraft. What does that have to do with community engagement at all? Well, if you're communicating with a neighborhood who, has residents, whether they're, residents, folks who live there, or business owners or churches, schools, as I've mentioned before, and they have feelings of being in a group of the unheard, right? Maybe they're unheard when it comes to access to healthy food. Maybe they're unheard when it comes to transportation in their neighborhood. Maybe they're unheard when it comes to access to jobs, jobs with dignity, right? Good morning, Darylyn. Welcome. Maybe there's a list of things that are occurring in their life that they feel that no one hears them. Nobody hears their cries, their concerns, their requests. And so then you come into the neighborhood to talk about, we are building this park for you, and we are about to put in this new equipment, and it's modern and it's state of the art, and it's from recycled materials shipped in from the state of Washington. I'm not joking, but you know how these projects go, and you're so excited about your project, and they are looking at you like a deer caught in headlights because they have other priorities going on in their daily lives of which they are not feeling heard. And so, no, not always feeling unheard leads to an actual physical, violent riot. But not all riots manifest in that way. A riot, which is a protest, right, can also manifest in not listening to anything you have to say, giving you the cold shoulder, not engaging, not responding, not attending meetings, not reading anything that you send out. You know why? Because they've already made up in their mind that no matter what platform you establish, you're not listening to them. You're not going to hear a word they're saying. You're just doing it because the law is telling you to do it. Welcome, April. Welcome, Andrea, this morning. You're just doing it because someone is telling you to do it. You're not doing it from a place of authenticity. And people can see that. Or maybe you've been in that community before and you didn't engage, you didn't alter your communication style to really connect with people. Now, what does that mean, altering your communication style? Does everybody speak English? Question number one. If there's a large population of folks who live there that speak another language, you may want to consider using a translator and translating some of your information into that language. Is there a particular culture or ethnicity that's very predominant in that community? Are they celebrating a religious holiday during the exact period of time that you're trying to have a meeting? And when I say meeting, back in normal times, a few months ago, you were having in-person public meetings, right? People were showing up. Maybe you had some, water and some chips. You get your PowerPoint presentation out and you ask anybody if they have any questions. But now those of us who are working in community engagement every day, we're having to engage with people through video conferencing, having a good old-fashioned conference call, because not everybody has Wi-Fi and a computer with a camera. I mean, some of us have a computer and the camera doesn't work well, right? Some of us are getting on Zoom calls and we keep getting kicked off over and over again. It's like, I don't understand. Some of us are getting on video calls, everything's worked fine, and then the whole Wi-Fi in the neighborhood goes out right in the middle of an important meeting, right? So, we all have varying levels of Wi-Fi security. But for those that really have different ways that they communicate. Good morning, Reggie. And I see your comment, so I'm about to get to that in 1 second. You got to think through these things. And one of the communities that we're working in right now has a large indigenous group and a Native American group. And they rely on oral traditions, oral communications. So the infographic may not work. It may not resonate with them. So you actually have to work with people in that community to talk to them, to ask them, how do you need to receive this information? What alterations or adjustments do we need to make? Do we need to be available more often to answer questions? Do we need to use more pictures? Do we need to surround storytelling around what we are talking to this particular community about? Reggie mentioned, does that also apply for dialects, say Geechee or coastal communities, hypothetically, of course? Yes, hypothetically, of course. Of course, yes. When you are engaging with the community, if you have someone on your team that looks like they can culturally relate or connect to that community, that's not a guarantee, right? Because people look at you and they're like, yeah, I see you maybe whatever the ethnicity is that we are, but you're working for the man. So we don't know if we can trust you. So you have to develop these relationships over time, this trust over time. You have to identify who the thought leaders are in the room. Oftentimes the thought leader is not the loudest person, and is not the person that has the most questions. Is Auntie May in the back who hadn't said anything. So you've put together this whole presentation, or you've done this entire video call or conference call, and you think you've done fantastic. I mean, and you probably have in your best way, but everyone's going to go to this person in the community and ask them what they think. And then they are going to make their decisions based off of what that person thinks, not on anything that you said. So you need to identify who that is. Is that one person? Is that a group of folks? Is it a nonprofit? Is it a homeless shelter or a social organization who has really been in tune with working with the community? I know in Washington, D.C. right now, in the different wards, the wards separately are really activating to help the residents within their ward, to really tailor what they need, what they're providing to what those residents need, whether it's diapers, whether it's hand sanitizer, whether it's making sure people know what programs are out there, so that they can delay paying their utility bill because they lost their job. We have all heard these stories over and over again. And we also see how communities can be resilient in really knowing who they are. And as communities know who they are, if you want to communicate with them, whether it's through engagement, outreach, education, you need to know who they are as well. Judith, welcome. Judith says that oftentimes a thought leader is not the loudest person in the room or the person with the most questions. Exactly. It's really it's someone who is like really quiet. The other thing that I found is that, I mean, even the way you set your chairs up, right? I'm talking in person again, really can determine the comfort level. So if you set up more of you're standing up front, tall. I mean, I'm only 5'1", so only so tall, but I'm standing up and everybody else is sitting down. You're creating this power dynamic, right? And you don't want people to be intimidated. But if you arrange the chairs in a circle, or, you're sitting down on the same level that they're on, or maybe you're sitting on the edge of the stage, those all matter. It's an environment. And it's an environment of safety that you're creating. One of the things that we're doing in the digital space right now, we had a community engagement meeting virtually, right? Using Zoom webinar format. So people could, write their questions in the Q&A and somebody was handling the questions. And there were a lot of people that participated, but we needed to make sure that the folks that were on the call that actually live close to the project, that we were getting their questions. So you do have to do something that's called progressive questions, and making sure that you're answering questions of the people who are most impacted by your project first. Because if you don't, they just get lost. Because there's always that one person who asks compound questions, not just the one, but they answer the one, you've answered it, you're trying to move on to the next person, and then they've answered another question before you can even take a breath, and then they're asking another question, and you don't want to be rude, but you need to create this rhythm, because there can often be a power dynamic just in that room, whether it's in a physical room or whether it's in a virtual room. Also, engagement is tough if you're doing a webinar, because essentially you're presenting to the people on the call. Nobody can see each other. Nobody can see who asked what question. And so there can be a disconnect there in terms of building community. So yes, there are digital platforms that you can use, but in order to build that community, either you need to use a platform where people can see each other's faces, or you need to do a conference call where you're taking and you're fielding questions in real time. And you can, and then you can also do a good old fashioned call people directly. If you feel like there's a perspective that you have not heard, identify who might have that perspective or who might represent that group, and you reach out to them directly. Okay, Rob, yes, beware the panel bully. Have any of you guys ever been on a panel discussion, right? You've had a prep call. You know you're only supposed to have a certain amount of time to say what you have to say. But then someone on the panel, I mean, literally is sharing their dissertation. They are talking so long, and they don't even realize that people's eyes are crossing. They've tuned out. The other panelists are looking at them like, for real? Are you really doing that? You gonna answer all the questions? You just gonna talk? You're gonna suck up all the time? Because what I find, at least in the audience, when I'm at a panel discussion, you learn so much by the questions that are asked. That's when you get into actually from, more of an academic perspective to the real world. Like, how is this impacting people in real life scenarios and questions? And so the panel bullies are tough. I mean, if you have a moderator, you know, people choose moderators oftentimes because of their title and et cetera, et cetera. But the moderator also has to have the skill to moderate the panel. So, Rob, I think the best way to handle that is to have an agreed upon signal, word, or phrase that the panelists know that if the moderator says that thing, the moderator is saying to them, you need to wrap it up. and the imaginary Sandman, for those of y'all who remember the Sandman with the hook on the Apollo, has to come out in some way, because it's really a disservice to everybody when you're dealing with panel bullies. But that can occur in community engagement when it comes to people asking questions and how they're asking questions. And then I also want to talk about power dynamic again. A good example would be neighborhoods that are gentrifying, right? So you have your legacy residents who have lived there for decades, maybe generationally. And oftentimes they are groups, there are communities of color who don't work in professions where they have a lot of say and they have a lot of power. Well, then you have new residents move in who are usually of a different demographic, and they want to do what they believe is improving the community. Yes, let's fix these roads. Let's open this restaurant. Let's do these series of things. And so they have their priorities as well. Sometimes when you have the legacy residents and the newer residents in the same room, the legacy residents won't say anything because they're just not used to talking in front of certain people. And there's an intimidation factor, and they don't feel like it's a safe space. Not that anybody is going to do anything to them. They come from a generation oftentimes where they just don't feel like they're in a safe space. Well, that's when you need to segment. Hi, Ann Blair. Good to see you. That's when you have to sometimes have smaller separate meetings. That's okay. You can have separate meetings, and then you can have big group meetings. You make those adjustments based off of the community that you're talking to, and choose spaces that are comfortable for them. Sometimes you may have to have a meeting after an already established Bible study at a church in a neighborhood. Maybe there's a high school football team that everybody rallies around, and so everyone in the neighborhood is going to be there. That would be a great place to have pop-up engagement. Maybe there's a train station or stop in that neighborhood where a lot of people use that public transportation, and that's a good time to catch them. And so, again, it's about altering your communication style to how the people that you are attempting to connect with, how they receive information, and what are their comfortable, safe spaces, in identifying what is happening in their lives, in their universe, where they may not feel heard. That doesn't mean that you're required to solve those problems. If you're coming in to talk about a trail and you're not coming in to solve a food desert, that's okay. You can still, if somebody brings it up to you, you can acknowledge that is a challenge. My dog is joining the Facebook Live, Snowflake. You can acknowledge that's a challenge. You can bring an organization in the community that addresses food deserts to come to one of your sessions and just say, hey, we've been hearing from a lot of people in the community. This is a challenge for you. We are not the experts, but we have fill in the blank, Joe, here today to talk about what their group is doing to address food deserts in this community, whether it's pop-up farmers market, etc. And so you can bring resources to people. You don't have to be the resource, but you can bring those resources to people. And then what happens is they say, oh my gosh, they heard me. I feel heard. Now, what are they talking about again? Is this a park? Is this a cleanup? Is this a trail? They're running utility lines. What was Makara talking about again? Like, they can hear you now, right? They can hear you now because you've addressed that they have noise and you have expressed that you want to be part of the solution. Being results oriented, being solution driven is all people really want at the end of the day. People vent, obviously, but at the end of the day, people do want to, well, what can we do, right? That's part of the frustration that we all feel right now. When we see something that really just hurts our heart, but we feel helpless and we feel powerless because we don't think that there's anything that we can do. And sometimes that is correct, and other times we can, in our small ways, on our own islands, determine how we can really improve neighborhoods and circumstances for other people. And that oftentimes is bringing resources to them. That's time. That's not money. That's understanding. Not that I have to be an expert in transportation or in be an expert in, you know, why there isn't a standalone bank in this community and they gotta go to the check cashing place. I don't have to be a planning zoning expert for that. I mean, there's an organization here in Atlanta that, you know, one of the concerns around their project is affordable housing. Now, they're not building housing. They're not building affordable housing. That's not what they do. That's not what their mission is. But if you go to their website, they will have all these resources and they will have all these materials on affordable housing so that people can access that information and then apply it to their lives. So we just have a few more minutes, really one more minute, y'all, because I usually only make these chats 30 minutes. I do want to make sure, does anybody have any additional questions or comments that they want to share, that they want to mention as it has to do with community engagement, which really touches almost every single industry. Different industries call it different titles. Some say public involvement, some say community outreach, some say community engagement, some people call it lots of different things. Okay, Darylyn said that sometimes people are so frustrated that they don't trust themselves to talk without their cup overflowing. Relationship is everything, listening, hearing, taking action on what they want. That cup overflowing is one of the main reasons why I founded Hummingbird Firm is because I would go to meetings. People would, you know, the entity would give the presentation about the project. It would come to question and answer. And then the first person at the mic probably had everything crafted in their head about what they wanted to say. But the first thing they start doing is they just start crying, bawling, crying, because they are just overwhelmed. Their cup overfloweth with emotion. And in that space, you have to be quiet enough to let them take a deep breath to get to say what it is that they're trying to say, not to rush them along, not to be impatient, not to have a lack of empathy. But oftentimes they are just scared. They are fearful because they don't feel like they have all the information. They think information is being kept from them, and they are just really trying to keep their family safe. And if you keep that centered, then you know how to communicate with those people. Yes, you have the data, and you have the facts, and you have the information, but you can listen and then you can engage, right? You can listen. That's free. Just time and patience. Thank you to everyone for joining me today. Thank you for being part of the Hummingbird Firm community. For those of you, please follow us on our Hummingbird Firm page. Also, we have a page on LinkedIn. Like us, follow us there. We push out content every Friday during our community engagements chats, and learn more about us because we're doing great work, and our main goal is to really be a bridge builder and the connective tissue so that projects can be beneficial for everyone, so that everyone can walk away with a win. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next Friday. Bye-bye.